Einstein said that compounding was the eighth wonder of the world. I'll take one example from a letter Warren Buffett wrote to his investors in the 1950s. I think it was like 58 or 59. And he said that the Indians, the American Indians who were based in Manhattan, what was Manhattan in New York, in 1626, it's rumored that they sold the island of Manhattan to the Dutch for $24. That was the sale price. And of course, when people hear that, they say, $24, the Indians got taken for a ride and such. But let's say the Minuet Indians, I think they were the Minuet Indians who did that. Let's say the Minuet Indians had some kind of trust officer or investment officer in 1626, and the Dutch came to him, and this deal was on the table of $24, and you could sell this undeveloped island. So he would probably think about, well, what are my alternative uses if we don't do the deal, or what else can we do? And he'd probably run some numbers, and he would have probably concluded there was a fantastic deal. And why is it a fantastic deal? So let's say that $24 in 1626, the Indians were able to take that and invest it at something like 7% a year, for example. What would that $24 be today if it were invested at 7%? So let's do the math without any pencil or paper. So we have something known as the rule of 72, which some of you may be familiar with, which is that, if I have a 7% interest rate, I can take 72 divided by 7. It's approximately 10, which says that in 10 years, at a 7% interest rate, the money would double. Okay, so basically, if in 1626 they sold for $24, in 1636 they would have $48, in 1646 they'd have $96, and so on. It'd keep doubling every 10 years. So basically, if you take a 100-year period, you get 2 to the power of 10. 2 to the power of 10 is a good number to know. It's 1024. And let's throw away the 24 because that makes the math a little harder. So we have 1000. So in 100 years, whatever they got increases 1,000 times. So if in 1626 they got 24, in 1724 they have 24,000. Okay? And in 1823 or whatever, they have 1825, they have 24 million. And by 1925, they have 24 billion. And 2025, they have 24 trillion, right? So we did the math without a calculator, which is great. Well done, Mohnish, okay? And the thing is, you can do the math yourself also without, and the important thing with compounding is to have the fluency to do it in your head, because it's very important to be able to do this in your head because it has huge impacts. If I were to go and offer to buy everything in Manhattan, and then I subtract the cost of the buildings, which is the land value because it's undeveloped land, would the land be at 12 trillion, right? And the answer to that also is very simple. So the entire wealth of the planet, everything they own, is 300 trillion. The entire wealth of the United States is 80 trillion. It is very unlikely that something like 15% of that 80 trillion is just Manhattan land. And in fact, I think Warren calculated that, I think he calculated in the 1960 or something, it was 12.5 or 12 billion or something. Actually, it was less than 12 billion, something like 10 billion. So you might get to a few hundred billion maybe in value on a good day. So the Indians basically sold Manhattan at a rate where if they had held today, they had held that land till today, and they did the deal today, they would have basically lost several trillion in value by not doing the deal. Now, of course, the trust officer of the Minuet Indians was an idiot in terms of investing, and he didn't get them to 12 trillion. But that's a different story. We'll get to that later. So how do we get $24 to become 12 trillion, right? So let's break that apart. There are two factors that lead to the 12 trillion. The first factor is the length of time. Okay, length of time is a very important variable in how much your money grows. And the second factor is the rate at which it grows, right? And what we found is that even at not a very high rate, 7% is actually below what the S&P has done, you get some astounding results. Now, recently, I don't know whether you saw in the news, there was some older gentleman who passed away somewhere in the Northeast. He was a librarian, just a middle-class librarian all his life. And when he passed away, he gave the college where he worked $4 million. And everyone was surprised that this guy, who was very much a middle-class, ordinary guy, had actually got $4 million saved up. And of course, these journalists who wrote the article don't know how to do math, and they didn't attend the lecture that we're just having. So they didn't understand kind of how things work with get 4 million. So let's take a situation. Okay, so let's say there's an 18-year-old. And let's say this 18-year-old has very few skills and he can only get a minimum wage job, right? And so he's making something like $15,000 per year, working 2,000 hours or so. And let's say, for example, he's able to save something like 10%, maybe hard, but let's say he's living at home, etc. Saves 10% of that 15,000 before taxes, because he can put it in an IRA or something. So if this person is 18 years old, saves $1,500, and let's say he keeps putting the $1,500 every year into a retirement account. And let's say, for example, that he gets something like a 7% return on that money. And let's say that his income goes up very modestly, like his income is only going up by 2% a year. And when it goes up by 2% a year, his savings go up by 2% a year. So instead of saving $1,500 next year, he saves $1,530. So it goes up very slowly. And when he retires 50 years from now, which is at the age of 68, he is at that point, 50 years later, making less than $50,000 a year. Didn't have any significant growth in income, just barely kept up with inflation and such. What would that person have at the age of 68? Well, let me make it easy for you. The first year when he saves the $1,500, he's got 50 years. We know it's 7%. We know it doubles every 10 years. We know it's 2 to the power of 5. We know 2 to the power of 5 is 32. And we know what 1,500 times 32 is. So he's got 48,000, right? So what he saves at 18, at the age of 68 is 48,000. Age of 19, maybe somewhere similar to that, but you get the point as you go on. The end result, just to make it simpler for you, is a little over $1 million, okay? So the librarian is not making 15,000. He's got a white-collar job. He's probably making somewhere less than 100 and maybe more than 40 or 50,000, somewhere in that range. And he paid attention when they were talking about compounding in math class, and if he makes 4 times what the guy with the minimum wage makes without doing anything esoteric, he ends up with a very significant net worth. So the question is, why doesn't everyone end up wealthy when we retire? Because there's not much required to become wealthy. You just have to follow a certain game plan and you'll be there. And in fact, at the age of 68, the guy was making less than 50,000. He could start withdrawing 50,000 or more per year from that account and would outlast the rest of his life because he'd have a 5% withdrawal rate and he's got a 7% earnings rate, so the money will actually keep growing. So compounding is a very important element to understand. And again, what matters is it makes a huge difference if that person starts at the age of 18 versus 28. Huge difference. And my daughter, my younger daughter, last year, she interned at a place and she got paid like close to $5,000 during the internship, and she had no expenses and such, so the money was just sitting there. So I said, you can open an IRA, and so I got her to open an IRA, and then I said, if you trust me, you can give me power of attorney, and I can invest the money for you. And one time she was flying back from New York, she was very tired, and I just told her, that $5,000 you gave me at the age of 18, I put it into one stock, because we can take some risk because you're just 18, you don't need the money, and probably that stock doubles or triples in the next 2-3 years because it's my best stock pick. And so I said, let's say it doesn't even double or triple. Let's say it goes at 15% a year or something. So 15%, rule of 72, every 5 years things double, right? And I ran the math for her, and I said, what does the 5,000 become at the age of 68, right? So you got 50 years to the power of 10. So you got 10 doubles, you got 1,000. You get to 1,000 times the 5,000. which is 5 million. So I said, Momachi, you worked one summer, and in the age of 68, you'll have 5 million from the summer work. But then the next summer, you're going to work again, and that'll become 5 million at the age of 69. And at some point, you're going to graduate, and you might make more than 5,000 in a year. And you might actually save a few $1,000s. And I said, what's your net worth at the age of 68? And I gave her some number, and it was like 2 in the morning, I was picked up from the airport, and she was asleep, and she was wide awake. She said, oh, like, how did that happen, and what's going on? Very, very, very focused. And so the thing is, it's the two pieces. The length of the runway is really important, right? So 50 years, number of doubles. It's all about the number of doubles. This is how Buffett thinks about it. How long does it take things to double? So if you ask Warren Buffett, Mr. Buffett, I'm the genie from Aladdin. You can have any wish you want. What would you like? So you know what he would say? He says, I only want one wish, which is that when I'm dead and they look at me, they say, man, he was old. Okay? So he just wants to not die for as long as possible. And it's not like he loves all of us on planet Earth is why he doesn't want to die. He wants to compound, and he wants to keep compounding for as long as he can. And I think in his case, he's 86, and he started his compounding journey at the age of 11, and he actually understood compounding, I think, age of 9 or 10. And I think at 24 or something, he told his wife that we are going to be wealthy beyond our dreams. We're going to have more money than we won't know what to do with it. And so we got a plan for, what are we going to do with all this extra cash? And his wife thought, this guy is, because I want to buy a house, we don't have money to buy a house, he thinks we're going to get super wealthy, what's going on? And of course they did. So compounding is a very important element, no matter what your profession or calling in life ends up being. It's very important to have the fluency in math, very important to understand the concept of a runway and the length, time it takes to double, and compounding rate. And don't take the retirement account or 401k or IRA, pull out the money and go on vacation. The time value destruction of that is huge.